This episode of RealAg Radio is brought to you by Ag Expert. Go from field to farm with Canada's most trusted, most secure farm management software. Ag Expert keeps you on top of it all, no matter where you are. Get started for free at agexpert.ca.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Thursday edition of the show. Hey, thanks so much for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a part of your workday. And of course, big shout out as well to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. Special treat for you today on the Farmer Rapid Fire. I'll get to that in a second. I first want to mention our sponsor of the Farmer Rapid Fire is Pioneer Seeds Canada. For more than 90 years, Pioneer has developed and tested products to meet those local challenges that you're dealing with. With new Optimum Glide canola, Enlist E3 soybeans, to the high-performing corn products and industry-leading traits and technologies, and all of that adds up to really maximizing yield potential. Pioneer's on-the-ground teams can help you get the right products for your field, specific to your fields. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more. It is great having Pioneer as the sponsor of the Farmer Rapid Fire. Now, I mentioned special treat. So, as we've kind of been talking about all week, this weekend, May 20th, is the 20-year anniversary of the BSE crisis. And so I have really handpicked 3 producers that from different areas geographically, but also different sectors of the industry. So we got Ken Schaus in Ontario. He is eyeballs deep in the cattle sector his entire life. We've got Tim Oleksyn, who is in Saskatchewan. He's a rancher. We've had him on the show before. And then we've got Leighton Kolk, who is a feedlot owner and also has cow-calf pairs as well. He's in southern Alberta. We're also going to hear today from Pioneer agronomist Ashley Knapton from Eastern Ontario will be with us as well. So we're going to talk to them about their perspectives of the BSE crisis and the impacts and just share their thoughts on this whole topic as we enter the 20-year anniversary this weekend. So looking forward to it. If you have any feedback on today's show, we'd love to hear from you. Share your perspectives on this topic or anything that's top of mind. My email is shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find us across all the different social media platforms, or you can call that RealAg feedback line 855-776-6147. Let's take a break. When we come back, let's start out east with Ken Schaus on the Farmer Rapid Fire. You're listening to RealAg Radio.
Boron is an essential micronutrient for plant growth, and without boron, your crops can't absorb the macronutrients they need for higher yields. Although borates occur naturally, boron deficiency is a common soil problem. Whether in direct soil application, through fertigation, or as a foliar spray, US Borax has the right refined product for your crops. US Borax products are specifically formulated to combine with other fertilizers, lowering your application costs. Learn more at borax.com/ag.
How's your seed quality? What should you treat with? What about herbicide carryover and environmental concerns? Spring is here, and you've got a lot of things to think about in regards to your pulse crop. The Pulse School on Real Agriculture has information and advice for all these questions and more to help you navigate this season. Brought to you by BASF. Pulse School episodes are available at pulseschool.com, realagriculture.com, or as a podcast on your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
Welcome back to the Farmer Rapid Fire here on RealAg Radio. And of course, the Farmer Rapid Fire is brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada. Make sure you go to pioneer.com/Canada to find out more information about their great lineup of hybrids in corn, soybeans, and as well as some of the technologies, things like Optimum Glide. Check it out, pioneer.com/Canada. And we take the Farmer Rapid Fire into Chesley, Ontario, and we're talking to Ken Schaus. Ken, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Shaun. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Okay. So, Ken, let's talk about what's happened on the farm here this week. How's planting proceeding?
We've got the corn all in the ground, and I would say it went in just about ideal conditions. You get a lot done these days with this kind of equipment we're running, and the corn is in. Started soybeans, and we've got 2 planters running. So, weather cooperates, it'll be in pretty short order here. And that's pretty typical in the area. Yeah.
Now, chilly nighttime lows. Have you been faced with any of that?
Yep. This morning it was, the last couple of days has been right around freezing. But, the sun comes out. There's not a cloud in the sky. There is some haze from, the Western Canadian forest fires. But other than that, I sure can't complain.
Isn't it amazing? Like I get we've been smoky here all week in southern Alberta, which makes sense, right? We're not that far away. But for that smoke to travel, like just the jet stream, like for it to travel all the way where you are, like it's kind of amazing. But it is a good reminder of some of the issues that people have been facing with these fires.
Yeah, I talk to the West every day, and it's very serious. And if there's any government officials listening, I think they should pull all the resources they can to help these people.
Yeah, well put. From a cattle feeding perspective, how are things shaping up right now in Ontario?
It's good. We've got cattle are all out on grass as well. There's the grass green up was good. We had that warm spell in April. Got the grass off to a very nice start. Ground conditions are good for turnout. We've got a few less cattle going to grass. There's been more and more, pasture ground been turned up. I would say in our area that we are currently in, I can add up about 1,100 cattle that won't be going to grass just because the ground was broken up and put in the crop this year. From a feedlot standpoint, Ontario is very current. That high basis compared to the West, and even with the states, plus some cattle going stateside, has got everybody very current. And there's some profits as well, which is good.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about the margins. The feed, on one hand, you're when you're both farming and have livestock, you kind of do talk out of both sides of your mouth. But I guess from a cattle feeding perspective, some of this relief that we're seeing in the corn market's definitely helping your profitability when it comes to feed costs.
We've seen, we're still net buyers of corn. We grow quite a bit, but there's got to be there's a happy medium. So I don't like seeing the guy that's delivering corn every week to our place losing money, and it keeps everything in check. If corn gets too cheap, we just, like everyone, we put it into the feeder cattle, and then there's just more dollars you're playing with. Interest rates are high compared to what we've been used to the last few years. So interest calculation is a big line item here on the closeouts, and we've seen some prices come down in some of the distillers' grains. There's 5 ethanol plants that we can work with here in our immediate area, and that supply is very good. We're fortunate here in Ontario that we've got as many byproducts as we do.
Yeah. Now, Ken, this Saturday, May 20th, is the 20-year anniversary of the BSE crisis. And wanted to ask you, as you reflect on that, give us your perspective. How I'm sure you remember that May 20th day and the border to the U.S. slamming shut and some of the chaos that sort of ensued there over the next couple months.
Yep. So, just when you mentioned that, it actually sent a chill up my spine when you said it. But I remember like it happened yesterday. 20 years ago, the industry in Canada was literally turned upside down. And I was in a cattle sale in Katy at the time, and I had the president at the time, Stan Eby of the Canadian Cattlemen's Association, call me, and he says, he told me what had happened. And, within minutes, the border was closed, and, it took 26 months for that border to reopen. And even then, there's still that long hangover of some things have just opened now to over 30 months, and I don't know how to describe. It's probably a once in a lifetime event. Hopefully, I think it's it just brought us to attention on how important open trade and trading back and forth with our largest trading partner was to us. We had a finished cattle market go from about $1.30 a pound at the time, and then 2 months later, we were selling finished cattle for 30 cents a pound. We weren't even getting the original cost back on the steer, and there was nowhere to go with them either. So, tough times, lots of money being lost, lots of people, including ourselves. We had a large inventory of cattle, and anybody with a loan with cattle, we got tossed in special loans within 2 weeks of the border being closed. And prior to that, I would consider ourselves as a very good client of one of the major banks. A good rapport with the local bank managers, and fairly high up as well. But literally within 2 weeks, we were tossed in special loans, and things changed. So,
what do you think we, as an industry, and maybe you have some individual learnings from it, but what did we learn from that experience about ourselves as livestock or beef producers?
I think the opening and the lobbying that took place, and the things that were done behind the scenes from not only the local associations, like at the time the Ontario Cattlemen's Association, the CCA, the Canadian Cattlemen's Association, was a very strong leader, and having strong, well-funded associations that have lobby efforts that can go out and do the work. Because as a producer, we don't have the time to commit to it. These people, the presidents, the people that sign up for these, be on these boards and give leadership to the national and local associations, I think they don't deserve enough credit for what they're doing. As far as, the industry as a whole, the lessons that were learned, for us, it was, we ran a fairly well contracted book, but most of that production, Shaun, at the time was to plants in the U.S. So when the border closed, those contracts became, null and void, and there's nothing we could do. So
yeah,
we had a fleet of trucks, and they all got parked, and eventually they all got sold. I had a feedlot over by Barrie that we had owned for 20 years to the date, and we ended up selling it. And you can just imagine when your inventory goes from not only half but goes into a quarter of its value overnight, and there's nothing you can do about it. I would say over the years, those are the things that have been that has cost the industry the most, is things you can't control. Border closings, trade actions, countervail duties, those are all things that are out of producers' control, and having a strong leadership with the CCA, Canadian Cattle Today, I think is very important. But when we got the call I remember getting the call to get the first load of cattle to go back into the States, and we worked those cattle on the Saturday. They went to a Cargill plant in Pennsylvania that we had been shipping to previously. It was 26 months when the border was closed, and we had the first load back into the U.S. It was just it was almost like a hallelujah event for us here, and it was a good time. So,
Ken, thanks so much for joining us here this week, providing your perspectives and reflecting on what transpired with the BSE crisis and how it impacted you as an individual producer. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. We'll check in with you a little bit later on in the growing season.
Nope, sounds good, Shaun. Thanks.
We are definitely in for a treat today as we continue to hear the perspectives from producers. and some of their experiences through the beginning of the BSE crisis 20 years ago, and get some of their thoughts on how some of that impacts today as well. Very, very cool kind of special show here today on this Thursday. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to go to Saskatchewan and then Alberta, and then come back to Eastern Ontario. You're listening to RealAg Radio, the Farmer Rapid Fire, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada.
Infuse some energy into your next corporate event, customer meeting, or conference with RealAg Radio, Canada's national agriculture radio show. Create a unique experience at your next event with host Shaun Haney, broadcasting RealAg Radio live on SiriusXM, featuring exciting guests, captivating interviews, and the latest news from the agriculture community. Contact advertising at realagriculture.com or call 587-787-1795 to book your on location with RealAg Radio today.
As you head out into the field this season, the Corn School's got you covered. Everything from tillage discussions, weed control info, field trial results, yield strategies, and more. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF. Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from RealAgriculture.com, or as a podcast from your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
Did you know that Pioneer now has a full lineup of Enlist E3 soybeans? Take a look at Pioneer brand Enlist E3 soybeans for the highest yield potential and for the best agronomic package and herbicide trait options. From the lab to the field, Pioneer brand Enlist E3 soybeans are the best in beans, period. Ask your local Pioneer representative about Enlist E3 beans.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio and the Farmer Rapid Fire, which is brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada. Make sure you go to pioneer.com/Canada to find out more information. And we take the Farmer Rapid Fire into Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. We're down on the ranch and we're talking to Tim Oleksyn. Tim, how are we doing today on this fine day?
Absolutely fantastic, Shaun. It's good. Good to hear from you.
Yeah. So, what's happening right now on the ranch? You guys also have some farming to do too, but what's going on this week?
So, you know what? We're like you guys there. Well, I shouldn't say like your operation in Lethbridge, but we're looking for some moisture. We're, seed's going well ahead. Of course, our moisture levels are different than what we look at for what you guys look at, but it's good. It's cold this morning, lots of smoke because we had that all across Western Canada. We could have a bit more for the grass coming up here. Cattle are processed. We got our cows in the ground we have a bit of an exit strategy on this ranch, so our numbers are getting down there. But leaves are popping. It's only 10 degrees here this morning, so yeah. We're good. We moved into canola the last couple of weeks, or last couple of days, I should say, and there's nothing really germinating, but it's good. The cowboy's always saying, "Why is that sprayer going?" Because I don't see much growing.
The weeds are coming, Tim. The weeds are coming now. And your grass, like you're in a bit of a different situation than some other parts of the province. Your grass condition is adequate.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's. When we say dry, it's not, I don't want anybody coming and driving in here and whacking me with a fork or anything, but we got good grass. We really do. And we had great snow cover. We've got all of that. We just need a shower to, just to wash stuff off and get things really bouncing, but it's moving along fine. Yeah.
Now, during calving there was some real chilly weather, really cold, and it really impacted a lot of ranchers in Saskatchewan at that time. It wasn't the amount of snow, it was basically the fact it was so cold and trying to keep those calves alive. Did you how did you get through that, or did the timing not hit you in too bad of a way?
Yeah, we just get, our operation is pretty mature, that, and so how we manage, of course, is every year there's a little bit more of a change, and you just got to spend time with them. That's it. But we use lots of bedding, of course. The new technology that's available with cameras and stuff like that are not only inside barns and outside, that you can have stuff calving close by and take a peek at the camera and do some movements and change stuff around. So it's just the tools are so much better here, and on top of that, you're continuing to use your genetics and identification of animals that they're up and going, and they're not slow dumb buggers. You have good nutrition, and they're up and they got to work too. So It's unfortunate in some of these storms that roll through and some operations, but we've talked to lots of cowboys down and. When those blizzards hit or some cold weather, and more of the blizzards and snow, and they'll say, "Well, I might have lost 15 calves, but God Almighty, I sure got a lot more tonnage of grass." So it's a trade-off, but it's a good deal. Yeah, you bet. No complaints.
It's hard to believe, Tim, that it is 20 years this weekend since the BSE crisis in Canada, and I wanted to invite you on here this week to the Farm Rapid Fire to kind of reflect as a rancher on that time. And, the feeding industry in Canada has really expanded since that time. They were impacted, but, it has expanded since. It's the ranching sector, the cow-calf sector that still fights the hangover from that day in 2003. Like, what are your thoughts?
Oh, God. You bring back, I remember that, that call and then a flurry of calls that first morning from leadership out there, and when people that are outside of the organizations, outside that were ranching and just were looking to people that were more involved and had their ear to what was happening, and talk about trials and tribulations. It was heart stopping. It really was, and we've learned so much from that time, and we've gone both ways. I mean, people won't appreciate all my comments on this, but we've done good and bad since that day. But the realization of good people, and the fact that what we needed of national and provincial organizations to walk through this, and the ability to have some fierceness in our conversations with our trading partners, especially down on south. That wasn't just Asia. Have been an ongoing process, Shaun.
Yeah. What do you think we learned? Is it that we have to be trade diversified? In some ways, I think of that. Like, we're obviously very reliant on the U.S. market, but it was the U.S. and 40 countries that closed their borders. So there were no takers of Canadian cattle for some time. What do you think the takeaway is?
Honestly, it has to do with, that dependency on the large market. We can't get away from that because of our geographics and our numbers. We can't eat our way out of it. At the same time, the ability for us to process better and do a better job of with those animals and the cuts that were available and what we could do with that and add value to each and everything was really important. Second of all, even the understanding of what happens with any sort of a conversation, that there's ramifications to that, and weighing those things out. But we looked at our production, and there's way more cattle in this in Western Canada that are raised with quads and baseball caps than cowboys and saddles and horses, as much as that's part of the allure that everybody wants to see, Shaun. But it really weeded out and looked at the ability for us to put production and economics into more of a highlight. It wasn't just a sideline job. Lots of our industry also. There were ramifications to that though too. We really focused on a lot of low cost. The improvements of raising on the cow calf sector especially, and the ability us to do that. And that's to a detriment of some of the operations of what I think we lost of animal. I'll say animal husbandry or even animals that are a little harder to manage or stuff like that, or relationship of a little wider spread of how we manage I'm going to say temperament of animals, stuff like that too. But on the other good side of the part about really focusing on the tools of genetics and stuff like that we could improve upon that. Saying that, it really put a lot of mindset into the cow-calf producers, especially of, I just don't need this shit. Excuse that part.
Yeah.
But, when they looked at the work that they were putting into that, and they just didn't need all the effort and the work, and that's still a real challenge of our industry, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah. Well, and Tim, think about your area, okay? And think about all of the people prior to May of 2003 versus after, and the difference in the number of cows on the ground.
You bet.
In just your area.
Yeah, absolutely. It's mind-boggling, but and again, it comes down to mindset of all of that too, because we have a lot of that land here, and all over, in Western Canada more specifically, I guess, that needs to have cows on it, or bison on it, or sheep on it, or some sort of a ruminant working on that, but sticking with the cattle. But I'll come back to even with that, Shaun, you can manage what we have for production so much better of some of the new tools that we have on that, but it's just lost because people don't want to work on any of that too. It changed mindsets. We knew people here that like grain farming, we'll call it mixed farms, and they'd have they'd have breeds of cattle that were, well, they tell the buyer, if you want my good calves, you got to have my shit, or my lower, what call it, also, and they would say, I would say no. You got to do a better job. We need to do that for our markets too. It created even those conversations of managing, our tagging systems and all that. Really, there's such a controversy and all that going through BSE, and we could trace one cow and right down to a yard here, and we're figuring on just point of origin. And I'm saying, what is that for marketing? It's marketing,
Yeah.
and so we're it's all of that. It came down to that marketing aspect too. It's so important.
Remind me now. That's a good point on the traceability. I need a history lesson here. Did Canada move to its full traceability system after BSE, or did we have that before the crisis, and we leveraged that traceability to help us through it? I can't remember. Do you remember?
Yeah, we were just starting that. We were just going down that road, of the tagging and the identification of point of origin, and not really, hard and fast into it, but we had started those conversations and comments because of our before that, our verified beef programs and things like that. Targeting of, that 15% of producers that, really looked at the value of that in marketing. And then it went, kaboom, and that's where things really got, hot and heavy of having to be able to identify these animals, because we couldn't just do it on a paper trail or with a brand. It's impossible. Can't be done,
Yeah.
And again, it came down to the focus, though, too, of, dealing with CFIA and rules and regulations of, again, sticking just of that whole purpose of animal health and traceability, instead of saying, let's use this on the marketing aspect too, which I continue to, push on and say that's the key. That's really the key, of being able to do those kind of things.
Tim, thanks for sharing your perspective. Greatly appreciated. Hey, good luck with the spring and summer here, and we'll talk to you a little bit later on in the year.
Yeah, you bet. And again, that invite's open for that fishing trip up here. You can golf or watch it from the side, and then we can go fishing too, Shaun.
Yeah, Absolutely. That sounds like fun, my friend. We'll have to take you up on that sometime.
Okay, enjoy. Thanks for being good.
One of my goals this summer, I got to make it to Tim's ranch. He makes it, he sweetens, the thing is though, he sweetens the pot every time we talk. Now we're going fishing. It keeps on getting better and better. So my procrastination is to my benefit, it sounds like. But I got to get there this summer indeed. When we come back on RealAg Radio, we got more of the Farmer Rapid Fire. You're listening to RealAg Radio, brought to you today by Pioneer Seeds Canada.
Want to get the best out of your soybean crops? Whether you've been growing them for a generation or are just starting into soybeans, find what you need to know at soybeanschool.com. You'll see videos on growing tips, pest control, and much more from specialists across the region, all in one place. Easy for you to access from your desktop, tablet, or mobile phone. Maximize your yields by staying up to date with the Soybean School, presented by BASF, Pride Seeds, and Syngenta Canada.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio and the Farmer Rapid Fire, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada. Next, we're going to take the Farmer Rapid Fire into Iron Springs, Alberta. We're talking to Leighton Kolk. Leighton, welcome to the Farmer Rapid Fire.
Good to be here.
So, hey, Leighton, what's going on the farm there this week? You've got obviously you got a feed yard, you got your cropping as well. So busy times.
Absolutely, Shaun. We're it feels like an early spring. And pretty much all our crop is in the ground. Some of it waiting for rain of irrigation nature are the skies. But we've actually got our corn planted. Finished planting the earliest we've ever done. So we were done by May 2nd. All our corn was planted. The crops are in the ground in southern Alberta for the most part, and now we wait.
Yeah. So on some of the dryland acres, of course, we're waiting for Mother Nature, which feels like very, very familiar territory because we have this very dry bias in southern Alberta for the past number of years. Hopefully, because of La Nina, that changes this year. Now, what oddly feels similar too is the fact for the second year in a row, there is concerns about supply of water with the Lethbridge Northern Irrigation District. You've got a substantial amount of irrigated acres. This year, though, it doesn't have to do with somebody allowing access to a gate. This year, it has to do with leaks in the canal. Do you have any irrigation water at this point?
I guess all of us downstream from Keogh Lake, which is one of the online stream storage ponds or reservoirs, we are on that downstream. So we're allowed 1 inch of water per acre, and we've accessed virtually all of that already. We have a couple fields where we haven't, but we are in the process of burning up our 1 inch of allocation right now.
Wow. And with how dry it is, that 1 inch is not going very far. And especially when we're talking about some of the crops that are in the ground that are downstream from that Keogh storage. I think about hybrid canola. I think about potatoes and corn, of course, that all those are going to need a lot more water than 1 inch.
Well, absolutely. I guess, some of the crops, 1 inch will actually get us germinated and starting to root. And that's good enough for May 17th. That we can live with that for a little bit and hope and pray for Mother Nature to kind of help us through for a bit. And oddly enough, the smoke that we're experiencing from the forest fires up north is actually brought our temperature. We were like 8 or 10 degrees below expectation yesterday, and it looks like today too. So, though bad as the smoke is, it's actually probably helping a wee little bit. But so corn, hybrid canola, some of our cereals, they're okay. If we put 1 inch on, they're going to be all right for another week, 10 days. Our fall rye and our winter wheats, wow, they're hurting. It's time. It could use 4 inches of rain or 4 inches of water today, not 1 inch. Yeah, so that's probably where we're seeing actually damage happening already on our fall rye, which are intended for silage for our feedlots. We really kind of we rely a lot on that production fill the pits.
And you have water supply in the dugouts for a lot of the feed yard. You're in a highly intensive feeding area. There's water for the animals is not in question this year, correct?
Well, thankfully, right. That they've put the district has put high priority on livestock, so we were allowed to top up or fill our reservoirs, or at least get them in good shape for now. So yes, that thankfully is good. Now, saying that, we're downstream from Keogh. There is operations that are upstream from Keogh, and they're, that's a little more dicey because the water has to come out of the diversion and come down the main canal, the Alberta Agriculture Canal. It has to come down that one to feed some of the Monarch Park Lake areas. So they're I'm sure they're quite thankful to hear that there is some water going down the ditch now.
Leighton, also this weekend is the 20-year anniversary of the BSE crisis. I know where I was when I heard the news. How do you think back on that day and some of the impacts that transpired over the next couple of years?
Yeah, oh wow, it's like everybody that's of the right age remembers 9/11 and where you were when you saw the plane hit the tower. And for people in the cattle business, you can remember exactly where you were when you heard the news, whether it was by phone. I got it by a phone call, and I can remember exactly, because it's like, I don't know what it means, but I know it's bad. That's all. I think that was my gut reaction, probably everybody's gut reaction. Is like, this is bad, but we had no clue how bad. So yeah, May 21st, I'll probably never forget this, right? May 21st, 2003 was the beginning of the wildest cattle ride we ever had, and it was way worse. I remember at the time going to a coffee shop to catch up with guys and say, like, holy, we could be in trouble for months. And yeah, that was highly underestimated. We were in trouble for years.
Mm.
It was cute story, Shaun. We hired one of our great staff members the month before, and he's still with us. So we celebrated his 20th here just the other day, and we told a few stories, and the one story was like, we had 1,400 cows. He was helping us calve cows. We had 1,400 cows that year, and they went from $1,300 a piece to the price you could get if they died and you could sell or if you could test them for BSE, you would get paid $320, I think.
Oh wow!
$235. So they on paper, there's a whole bunch of us that basically were bankrupt. But the banks didn't want to feed the cattle either, so they left us alone for a while.
Oh man, yeah, the stress and the pain, and we're still trying to figure out how to rebuild the cow herd. You just sparked a memory. Did Paul Martin was Prime Minister? Didn't he come to the community center in Picture Butte, Alberta?
Yeah,
right? Yeah, he did, right?
Yeah, he did. He actually absolutely did, and he went out to GF Murray's, to Sean's feedlot, to actually do a little photo op, I think, and that was I guess it was the heart of cattle feeding in Canada, and this was a major herd on for every cattle feeder from the Pacific to the Atlantic.
Yeah, no kidding. And how long did it take where you felt economically like you had, because the scars are still there in the mind for a lot of people, but from an economic standpoint, like even when the border reopened, it still took time to recover economically. Like it was a years of really, really tightening the belt and persevering through that time period.
Yeah. Shaun, it's kind of like my attempt at stock trading. One major loss, and it takes 10 years and 100 trades to make it back. It was like a jump off the cliff, and I think it was like jumping off a cliff. So our prices went from 90 cents, 94 cents a pound for a fat animal, for a finished animal, dropped to like 65 within days. But it was like we landed on the first ledge, but then we kept falling down the cliff, and there turned out there was a bunch more cliffs before we hit bottom. So we landed at 35 cents was the lowest we ended up paying for cattle, or getting paid selling cattle for, and that was when the real jam was on in August of that year. And so basically everything we owned dropped by either half or 2/3. And the recovery, thankfully, between Canadian consumer and Canadian taxpayer, that there was big support all around, kind of supporting the beef industry and the cattle industry. And I think 5 years after the main hit, the balance sheet may have, depending where you landed and how you kind of rolled with the punches and how your bank treated you and everything else. 5 years later, it felt like, well, we're back to where we were pre-2003. Now we've kind of wasted. It'd be a little bit like for the average person in town to say, well, I was making my payments on my house, and then I'd keep making my payments on my house, but my house dropped in value, and my payments just went up in smoke. And I spun my tires for 5 years, and now I can start paying down my mortgage again. It was kind of that sort of. So our efficiency and competitiveness was probably, we're 20 years later, and we're probably still behind because of BSE, behind our major competitor, which is America. But we're competitive now. But wow, that was 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. We made baby steps back. Took much longer than anybody would ever dreamt.
It did that. And like I said, we're still trying to find solutions to rebuild that cow herd. All those people that had 50, 100 pairs, there was it could have been, that was off for, sort of additional income that they were not hobby ranching, but they were in the business. Those people are like gone. They're, to get them back is just, it's a very tall ask. So the hangover continues in some respects. Leighton, thanks so much for joining us. I hope Mother Nature cooperates, and I hope the LNID sorts this out with the irrigation canal and water starts flowing, because things are going to turn sideways very quickly here if it does not. Hey, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks a lot, Shaun. Keep up the good work.
When we come back on RealAg Radio, we're going to hear from Ashley Knapton of Pioneer Seeds Canada to talk about some of the things that she's seeing in her territory. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada.
Whether you're seeding, harvesting, or anything in between, the Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com has you covered. Timely agronomic information from industry experts available online anytime. Give your wheat crop a good start and a great finish with the Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com. Brought to you by C&M Seeds, Syngenta Canada, and the Alberta Wheat and Barley Commission.
I get to spend every day talking to farmers in the ag industry through RealAgriculture.com and RealAg Radio. But nothing is more fun than speaking to an audience live and in person. If you're planning an ag event, book a Real Agriculture speaker to make it a successful and memorable experience. Email shaney@realagriculture.com and you can book myself or any other Real Ag personality to speak at your event. Bring your audience all the fun, insight, and energy of Real Agriculture.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit canolaschool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
And we finish off this week's Farmer Rapid Fire with the sponsor of our show. It is Pioneer Seeds Canada. And right now we're talking to the Eastern Canadian Dairy Strategic Accounts Manager for Pioneer Seeds Canada, and it's Ashley Knapton. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Hey, Shaun, how are you?
I'm doing really good. I'm doing fantastic. So I guess, you're traveling across Ontario and the Maritimes. What have you been hearing a lot from some of the people that are in that territory?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's been a hectic couple of weeks here. Certainly been the focus, right? Is we've got a whopping majority of our corn in the last, probably 10 days. Beans are going in as well. So kind of nice to be hammered down and beating the bush back on that front. And then a little bit of frost conversations here, but, hopefully we can keep that at bay.
Yeah, keep that frost at bay. No kidding. It's hard. I mean, probably not totally out of season for mid-May, but it's still a concern nonetheless. We're getting some warmer days, so it hopefully will be out of any sort of a frost concern here in the very, very near future. Now, you deal a lot on the forage and silage side. We're getting really close to that first cut of alfalfa out your way. What are some of the things that growers need to be thinking about at this time?
Yeah, great question. I mean, honestly, the first thing I want them to be thinking about is first cut. We're so hammered down in planting that it's going to be hard to realize that, within kind of 10 days to 2 weeks, we're going to be cutting hay. And so, I want to challenge producers to think about, how much inventory do you have? Do you have lots of feed? Are you tight on feed? Because that's going to kind of affect our harvest timing decision, because it's a yield quality trade-off, right? So think about what your goals of this first cut are and have it in the back of your mind so that we can hit that target and set not just this first cut up for success, but every cut after it.
So talk about that balance between volume and quality. Talk about that a little bit deeper.
Yeah, for sure. So as a crop matures, and this is whether it's a grass-based forage or a legume, I think a lot about alfalfa, so I'm going to reference that most. So as alfalfa matures towards that, seed stage of life, we lose a lot of quality. And so we start to increase our fibers, we decrease our digestibility, we decrease our protein content, some of those key things that we really need for rumens. And so we kind of need to think about, how much yield do I need to get? Because that's, kind of the uphill swing of this crop right now is it's accumulating yield. But how much quality am I willing to sacrifice? Here in Eastern Ontario, where I'm based, I would say we had really strong yields last year on our haylage crops. So realistically, some producers are probably willing to sacrifice a little bit of that yield to capture just a little bit higher quality feed and, have a little bit higher performance out of these cows, whether they're, gaining weight in the beef herd or if they're making more milk at the end of the day in the dairy herd.
When it comes to the corn crop and we think about corn silage, are producers treating their corn for grain? Are they managing it any different than, say, you would for silage? Are there differences, or have those differences kind of it's more common in terms of how you would manage that one crop for different uses?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I sometimes joke the only thing we do different in corn silage is we cut it earlier. And that's not entirely true. We do certainly want to see, we bump our populations a little bit more because we can push our luck to capture a little bit more overall tonnage. But in terms of, we want great late season plant health. We really want high starch overall. So when you're looking at a dual purpose corn silage, we're going to treat it like a really high performance grain corn, and that's going to set us up for success. The real differences come in when we look at something like BMR. So that brown midrib corn, because it has that less lignin, it does behave a little bit differently in the field, and we do have to tweak our management practices a little bit accordingly, all in the name of that high quality forage, which really matters right now. I would say producers have always been doing a good job, but in the last couple of years with feed prices where they are, we see folks pushing, how can I make my forage the absolute best that I can? Because it really impacts our on-farm feed costs.
Ashley, one of the things, just to leave agronomy here, one of the things we've been chatting about a lot on this show with all the producers is, we've talked to people in the beef industry here today, and you have a strong background in the dairy industry, also obviously has to do with cows. On Saturday, it's hard to believe, but it's the 20th anniversary of the BSE crisis in Canada when the border closed for those 2.5 months, and we still feel some of those ramifications today when it comes to the size of the beef herd.
Yeah,
you reflect on, it's hard to believe 20 years ago, but from a dairy perspective, how do you think about that time period?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question. I was young at that time, and so I wasn't. I hadn't gone to school. I wasn't actively involved in the farm aside from, with my 4-H calves or whatever. And yet I remember that moment really distinctively. I remember reading about it in the farm papers, and I remember, hearing about the implications of it with other dairy farmers. And as I kind of reflect back on that now, knowing how connected the dairy and the beef industries are, for early teen me to be so aware of what was happening, I could just imagine the impact that it was having on, the beef sector, which I really didn't know a lot about at that time. And so, it's big. I don't think I have to say that. Everyone knows that. But certainly it would be curious to know what both of our industries, both the beef and the dairy, would look like now had that not happened 20 years ago. Because it was just, it changed so much. It changed the way, we purchased some cows at that time. Cow prices dropped. We got really great cows for a lot cheaper than we could have because everyone had too many animals. And that's on the dairy side. I can't imagine on the beef. So, yeah, wild.
Well, appreciate your perspective. And thanks again for joining us here today. And a big shout out as well to Pioneer Seeds Canada for being the show sponsor for the Farmer Rapid Fire here on RealAg Radio. Ashley, have yourself a great spring, okay?
Hey, thanks, Shaun. Take care. Appreciate the time.
A little bit of a different Farmer Rapid Fire today, but really, really cool to get people's experience and perspectives on such a monumental point in a generation's agricultural history. As we've been discussing here all day, you know where you were if you lived through it. And boy, there was some hardship, and really appreciate what we heard today from our producers. And it's great stuff. I'm sure you've reflected as well. And I would love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can send us a tweet across or use any of the social media platforms, or call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks everybody for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. Big shout out to our show sponsor, Pioneer Seeds Canada, for being the sponsor of the Farmer Rapid Fire. And we'll chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this episode of RealAg Radio, brought to you by Ag Expert. Go from field to farm with Canada's most trusted, most secure farm management software. Ag Expert keeps you on top of it all, no matter where you are. Get started for free at agexpert.ca.